Investors are flooding to the Indian shores. We're going to talk about podcasts on YouTube, and we're going to talk about, I guess, friendships, frientimacy. Enjoy.
Were you calling to me from outside of a dream? I wanna live, I wanna love you a little longer. I was invincible many years ago when I was so much stronger. I wanna smile like a letter from an old friend. My arms are wide as oceans. How I missed you and feeling good to be alive.
Welcome to the Age of Jeremy. My name is Jeremy Quintanilla. I'm the founder and CEO of Q Consolidated Limited. If you don't know who I am an entrepreneur and I own businesses such as 32 Warrior Academy, Q Financial, Age of Radio, and Merlin, the smartest way to track your crypto, to name a few. This is a podcast all about my journey as an entrepreneur, the trials and tribulations that I go through of being an entrepreneur, and how to build my business empire, or the stuff that I go through to build my business empire. And I hope you pick up some wisdom along the way. Occasionally, we will also have content creators, and I have 2 episodes that I'm working on getting it out from some great content creators that I spoke with actually last year, and I still haven't gotten them out. But that is probably one of the trials and tribulations of being an entrepreneur as well. If you love podcasts, which hopefully you do if you're listening to this one, check out our Age of Radio verse. It is the Age of Radio Podcast Network. You can see most of the catalog on YouTube at Age of Radioverse. You can also go to ageofradio.com, but we're redoing that website, so don't judge me. Again, that's one of the things that you got to do. You got to rebuild those brands, make that brand strong. And that is what we are doing. You can also check out some of our live shows on the Age of Radio YouTube. We have Explain It All. It's a crowdfunding roundtable. We also have Cause Talk Live, and we have Showcase, which is a show that I do from our Addicted to Podcasting Facebook group, which is free for every single person to join. So head on over to Facebook, go to Addicted to Podcasting. You can join, and also join our Discord. We are community manager. His name is Creator Trey, and he is creating a fun place for you guys to talk about all of the stuff that is related to podcasting and the topics that you enjoy listening to about podcasting, which for the most part are usually things like this, or maybe health and motivation, or fitness, or comics and gaming, or true crime. We have topics available for you in that Discord to find other like-minded individuals and to learn about other podcasts. So make sure that you check that out. There is a link to the Discord in the episode description, so make sure that you check that out as well. We are also working on building our Q Financial cash value life insurance, or permanent life insurance business. So if you want to learn more about that, there's also a link in the episode description. Fill out a form, and one of our wealth protection specialists will reach out to you, and we can do a consultation. And I'm really excited to see where that is going. If maybe you're interested in actually getting some extra income, maybe you have a life insurance policy and you love it and you believe in it, maybe you want to reach out to me and we can talk about how you can join our team, because I'm working on building one of the best financial services organization that's all about quantity, quality, and not quantity, it's quality, quantitative, and qualitative information. So we are about really helping build and improve the financial services industry through that. And we are starting with the life insurance, but I'm really excited to see where Q Financial goes, because I have a lot of things in store, and you can learn all about those things and how to do them as well by joining it or subscribing to this podcast. If you also want to know more about what I have going on, and this is just not enough for you, you can join my Age of Jeremy Dope Updates. It is a channel inside of Instagram, so follow me on Age of Jeremy at Instagram. And inside of there is a channel. It's called Dope Updates, and that's where I give a lot of more updates. So I know that's a lot. I'm trying to reduce the amount of things that I say at the beginning of it. It's just when you're an entrepreneur and you have a lot of things going on, you got to talk about those things to I guess, share them with the world. And we have so much stuff going on. So that being said, just follow me on all the socials at Age of Jeremy, and we're going to get into this amazing episode. So a while back, I was reading The Economist, and I found an article about India's economy, and there's this book from an academic about India and where I believe that they see India going over the next 10 or 15 years and continuing to rise in power. Because essentially the thought process is that the biggest countries in the world are going to be the United States, China, and India. And if you look at India's GDP growth over these last couple of years, it is astounding how big and fast and continuous India is growing, and I'm excited to see how that's happened. I was excited to read about, where they're going, and I bought the book. Book hasn't actually been published yet. It's a monstrous book. I think it's an academic book, so you can, I don't know, some academic books are a little dry. Hopefully it's not super dry. And it was supposed to be out a couple months ago, but it'll be out maybe in November, I think, is when the publishers are publishing. It's coming through Penguin, which I thought was really interesting, because I usually don't think of academic publications coming from Penguin. I usually think of them more from maybe Wiley or something. But that's I don't know why I think that. Probably something that I shouldn't be thinking. But anyway, so then I was like, okay, well, India is going to be a really important place in the future, and so I was looking at some Google Trends to kind of find some things that were moving that might be beneficial to people as they come out to talk about on the podcast. And I saw that India is seeing more bond buyers move onshore. And so Nations bonds got added to JP Morgan's bond index on Friday. So JP Morgan has a bond index, and India's bonds actually got added to that. Bank hosted a call Monday where index issues were discussed. So this is from Saikat Das and Subhadeep Sirkar. It's an article on Bloomberg's. Again, I keep telling you guys, I'm not sponsored by Bloomberg, but go and get a Bloomberg subscription. Go and get an Economist subscription. Stay up to date what's going on in the world, and you can kind of predict what's going to be happening and know where to invest. All investments have information inside of them, and essentially the price is saying that all that information is out. Well, if you can get that information before other people, or get onto that information by other people, you can get into investments and get them before all the information is priced in, and that's how you can make a good profit. And I'm very long on China and India and the United States to some extent. I don't think the United States is as bad as the fear mongering does online, but I think that we need to do a lot better in a lot of areas, and one of them is coming together. I think that when you think of the dictatorship in China, I think that is one of the main reasons why they're able to grow so much, is because it's just one person moving the country forward. I'm not saying that we need to be a dictatorship. I'm not saying that in any way whatsoever, but I'm saying that might make it easier. And India can be similar. They're not a dictatorship, but can be in similar fashion about moving the country forward and the nation being behind what is going on. At least from my perspective now. Maybe when I read this India book, I will have a completely different perspective, and I will read it and I will let you know. So more global funds will register in India and directly buy the nation's bonds once its weight in the JP Morgan Chase & Co. Emerging Market Index rises to as much as 5% by October. And that's what overseas investors told the U.S. bank. So several clients of JP Morgan who have been taking proxy exposures to India via instruments such as total return swaps and sub-rational bonds will now enter the South Asian market directly, they said in a client's call with the bank on Monday, according to people familiar with the matter. So most of the investing was based off of other types of index or other types of derivatives, which a derivative derive its value from something else. And so now they're going to go hardcore in the exposure themselves. So the higher weight in the index and ensuring liquidity for bonds will be a draw for the funds, they said, asking not to be named as the discussions in the call were private. India got added to JP Morgan's flagship emerging market bond index on Friday. This was Friday, I want to say June 29th. June 28th. So on June 28th, the bonds got added to JP Morgan's flagship emerging market bond index, and with an initial weight of 1% to be increased to 10% eventually over a 10-month period. So they are going to be weighting that index to 10% of that index within a 10-month period. The bank hosted the call on Monday for clients, including investors tracking the index. A Mumbai-based spokesperson for JP Morgan didn't immediately respond to an email seeking comments regarding the call. A JP Morgan client, I'm going to take a drink of my coffee. You might get some ASMR. Hope you got some ASMR from that. A JP Morgan client survey in May showed that 49% of investors were buying India government bonds to get exposure to the country, while 34% were using supranational bonds and 17% total return swaps, according to a June 25 note from the bank. So essentially, they're weighting themselves away from the derivatives piece of it and actually doing the exposure into the bonds in the government bonds in India. And so essentially a bond's debt. So they're essentially lending money to the government to grow whatever it's that they're working on growing. And then they will be given a coupon payment or an interest rate payment for that debt or for those bonds over the life of the bond. The Wall Street firm expects 20 to 25 billion of inflows into Indian debt as a result of the index inclusion. Overseas investors have long complained about cumbersome documentation requirements to access Indian debt market. The country's capital markets regulator is working to reduce paperwork for foreign investors buying only sovereign debt. And then again, this comes from Bloomberg News, so make sure that you check that out. And I would highly recommend maybe, just maybe you buy some Indian bonds or an ETF that has Indian bonds in it or something with India, because I think that I really believe that India is going to become one of the largest countries in the world. And one of the things too, this is a little bit away from that, but also about other countries. So I was listening to an economist, there's an economist podcast called The Drum Tower, I think is what it's called. And it's about China and Asian markets, I guess, but mainly about China and what's going on in China. And so inside of there, they were saying that in the vocational schools in China, they're urging the vocational students to take Russian, which means that China is really trying to strengthen their relationship with Russia, and that's having their people know Russian, understand Russia, which means that the Chinese are more likely to get involved more with Russian investments, Russian businesses, Russian politics, Russian government, Russian stuff. And so I think that this is one of the biggest things that I've always had a problem with when it comes to the United States, because here in the United States, we're bitching and whining because Mexicans from Mexico and other Central American countries, so El Salvadorans, Guatemalans, Hondurans, so forth and so forth, who all speak Spanish, they're all coming here, and we're bitching because they're coming here, which is fine, I guess. But the point that I'm trying to get at is countries are stronger when they work together, and it makes much more sense for us to work with the countries that are right next to us, like Canada, like Greenland, like Mexico, like the Caribbean, like, Cuba, like, and Caribbean's not a country, but the Caribbean countries, and then Central America, like El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Colombia. And one of the things that I think, and Colombia might be part of, I'm not good with geography, so I apologize. Colombia might be part of South America, but I'm not 100% sure, because it's probably Peru. I'm trying to think of the other places, that Nicaragua. Those are probably Central American. Colombia might be next to part of South. Anyway, someone make fun of me for this. I don't care. It's fine. The point is that I live in a town that is affected. I almost said infected. Affected by immigrants from south of the border, so Central America, Mexico, and probably South America. And so when I talk to people, and one of the biggest complaints that I get is if they're going to come over here, they need to learn our language. Now, I'm not disagreeing with that in totality, but if we put a plan in place in the United States to get all of our children and all of our people speaking Spanish, and Mexico put a plan in place where all of their people were working on speaking English, and we all worked together for this, we would grow investment and business operations into Mexico from the United States. They would be able to come over here and do better in business here in the United States. They would be able to go to Canada and do business a lot better because of that. If they wanted to learn French, they could go to Montreal. I think that they still speak English in Montreal, but again, geography and So we were always taught that Mexico, I was always taught, and this could just be from my parents, this could be from the country, this could be from the state, that Mexico is dangerous, that you don't go there. Canadians are crazy with their beavers. No one said that to me ever. And that you don't go to Canada either. And that no one actually ever said that. It's just that Canada is just Canada. And we weren't really taught a lot about it, which I thought was weird because we're in North America. We're all part of the Americas. And so that's why China's going to win, because China is in a goal and saying, we're going to teach this language. You're going to go and build business partnerships and help Russia and do shit with Russia. And Russia will probably, if they're smart, do the same thing with China, and same thing we should be doing with China. But more importantly, we should be doing that more with the countries that we have here, like freaking Mexico. Every single person in this country and every child in this country should speak Spanish. And if I have my way, that's exactly what would happen, because it would strengthen our entire continent. We have to start thinking about this, in my opinion, from a continental place. How are we going to do business across borders? How easy can we do business across borders? How can we keep people safe when we go across borders to do businesses? And let's make that easy for all of us to do that. Because I had a great conversation today, and I know I'm going on a little rant here. Great conversation today about capitalism and communism and businesses. And I think businesses are great. I think that businesses should be owned by the employees. They should be managed by the employees. And that is what I want to see. Do I think we need to do a revolution to do that? No, we just need to educate. We need to show people it can be done. And our inability to work better and partner better with our surrounding states and our surrounding countries, and to build stronger alliances with the citizens of the other countries, is going to be one of the things that hurts us the most. And we'll be right back after these messages. And I get some water because I've had to pause this like 9 times coughing. All right, we're going to kick off our new segment, social media, safari. I don't know what we're going to call it. Social media news, social media updates, hard finds in social media. I don't know. I'll work on the name. I need a lot of names to work on. In fact, if you haven't checked it out, every Friday on our Age of Radio versus Instagram, we do a live. Sometimes it's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or 6 Eastern, or 7 Eastern, I guess would be better, where I talk to one of the podcast hosts live. But I've been calling it AOR Talk Live, or Age of Radio Talk Live, and that's just, I don't know. I'm not loving that. I thought Josh was going to make one up for me. I don't know. Someone reach out to Josh. If you know how to reach out to Josh, goes by Chrome, and say, hey, where's the name for the AOR Talk Live show? I don't know what happened with this coffee, but there's something in the coffee. Excuse me. There's something in the coffee that's making me cough like there's no tomorrow. Okay. So social media. This isn't actually something that's going to help you as a content creator. I'm just going to share this because I am very disappointed in Google. My favorite podcast app was Google Podcasts. It didn't have all of the filing system stuff that I like. Now I'm using Pocket Casts. I still don't like it. It has more filing, but all the filing is locked behind a paywall, and I haven't purchased what I need to purchase with it. But Pocket Casts is so far okay. I was excited that they moved into YouTube Music, but it's very hard to still find the podcasts in YouTube Music, and you can watch them all on YouTube, because that's how you connect the podcast to the URL, is through your YouTube channel, and then they show up on YouTube Music and they show up on your YouTube. The problem is that it was very difficult to find what podcasts that you were following. And so my tip for today is they've updated that. If you go to YouTube right now on your phone. If you have it on your phone, you should have down at the bottom, home, shorts, a +sign, subscriptions, and you, which is your profile. Hit your profile, and as long as you have one podcast saved, okay, I'll explain that in a second. As long as you have one podcast saved, you will see a podcast like the Apple podcast. It's like the signal, or the microphone with the signal, and it'll say your podcast. You can click on that, and that is where all of your YouTube podcasts will be saved, and it'll say explore more podcasts, and it'll open up their podcast section where you can just go through, you can go through and just see all of the podcasts. And so go check that out. Some of them are video podcasts. Some of them are just the audio, like if the RSS feed, like there's Lex Friedman doing Lex Friedman-y stuff. In fact, I think that's probably live, though. Is this the live one? Yeah. It's him and Alex Huberman. Anyway, so I'm really excited about that feature. If you don't have any podcast save, you won't see that your podcast. So to save a podcast, you need to go to podcasts, okay? And you just need, there's a little button there, like a little it's a button. It looks like a flag that you would see in, like, I don't know, the Renaissance days, like a flag that hangs over a castle. It's like a tab looking thing. I don't know. If you comment and tell me what you think it looks like. You'll click that, it'll save it. And then now when you go there, it'll say new episodes and it'll show your podcast and it'll show you all the new episodes of all of your podcasts through that playlist. And then it'll have your podcast listed. And so that was a really big deal, in my opinion, for YouTube. So now I'm going to go through and try to find all the podcasts that I used to listen to on Google Podcasts, save them in my YouTube, and maybe it will go. But let me tell you, the podcast game is super weak on a lot of these platforms. And I hope that, no, we are going to change that in the future with Age of Radio. Just give me time and stay tuned to this podcast so you know what I'm doing. So hopefully that helped you out. Go to YouTube, make sure that you have your podcast. If you don't, go save a podcast, see what I'm talking about, and start your podcast journey on YouTube. Again, not sponsored, just trying to help you out because that was something they needed. And if you have a podcast and you're on YouTube, then share this with all the people so they know how to easily access your podcast on their YouTube. But let's face it, most people are probably using Spotify or Apple Podcast, which I'm not totally against Apple Podcasts. I don't have an Apple product except for my iPad mini, which you guys know that I love. But I don't really listen to podcasts on it. So I listen to podcasts, the Economist podcast, but I think they're behind a paywall. And inside of my Economist app, it says audio, and you click that and it has all of them. But yeah, so go check that out. Let me know what you think. If there's anything you guys want me to research, reach out to me on social media, or you can email me at jeremy.quintanilla@ageofradio.com. It's in the episode description down below. And guess what? We're going to have one more commercial and we'll be right back. Just one this time. So I did not know that you could get your ass beat. I knew you could get your ass beat at pool. I did not know that it would exhaust you if you played pool all day. So Saturday, I had a business meeting at a pool hall just because I wanted to play pool. I thought it'd be fun for me and the gentleman to play pool, get to know each other a lot better. Kind of like when people think that, all the business is done on a golf course. Well, I'm going to be 100% honest with you, and I'm sorry if I piss you guys off. I'm not a big fan of golf. I think golf is a little... If you're going to be spending your time doing something, I'm not judging anybody that's doing golf. Let me rephrase that. If I'm going to be spending my time, the amount of time that it takes to be doing something on a golf course, I would, 1, rather be playing pool. 2, I would rather be studying martial arts. 3, I would rather be reading. And if I was going to do something with friends, I would rather that be pool or darts or, I don't know, martial arts. And again, nothing wrong with people doing golf. It's just not... I try to get into it, and it's not that I don't enjoy golf. It's just like, if I'm going to put all of this energy into this one thing, I would rather put my energy into BJJ. I would rather put my energy into judo. I would rather put my energy into meditation or building businesses. But if we digress a little bit, doing something with other people, I would rather that be BJJ, pool, darts, something along those, even going out and shooting, something along those lines, going hiking. I just think that but I get that on the golf, you get to talk, but you also get to talk a lot when you're playing pool. You shoot, you talk, you play pool, you have conversations, you ask questions, you sit there, you watch other people play pool. It's fantastic. So I was playing pool with the gentleman who's going to help us move Age of Radio forward. If you sell something, the number one piece of advice that I can give you is get a salesperson as soon as you possibly can to help you with the sales of building up that revenue. And so Saphir reached out to me, said he would help. I'm going to have him help. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get other people to help. It's going to be a freaking sales extravaganza in here, specifically business to business sales when it comes to the Age of Radio stuff. So it's getting ad inventory sold through the podcast and get, awareness for people's products and things like that. So me and Saphir, I wanted to get to know him better. I said, hey, you know what? I'm on this journey of building really strong relationships with lots and lots of people, and then even stronger relationships with a little bit of people. And I'm really widening my circle. And it got me thinking that most people tell you to have a really small amount of close friends, and to keep your circle tight, which I think you need to keep the circle tight in the essence of, that inner part of the circle. But what's wrong with having like another part outside of that and then another part outside of that? I mean, we are communal people. When we were apes, if you believe in evolution, it's not about believing. It was so hard for me, and I love all of the people that I'm with. But I spoke about evolution during my my speech at our conference on Thursday, and it was very difficult because I had to say, I believe in evolution, but evolution is not something that you actually believe in. It's like saying that this is red. As of right now, until someone else can prove to me that this color in front of me is not red, that is the color red. It's the same thing with evolution. Until something comes along that proves that the evolution of theory is not factual, it's a fact. You don't say fact at the end of it because it's just not something that you do in the scientific community. So the theory of evolution is a factual thing until something comes along and disproves it. So it was very difficult for me to say that, but it's okay. I got over it. It's just, I think that I don't know. There's things that we need to be doing about educating people, and I think that religion needs to keep out of education as much as possible, and then be okay when you're having a conversation with yourself and your children about religion and evolution and so forth and so forth. But anyway, I digress. I got through it, so it must have not been that difficult. So I said, if you believe in evolution, or if you don't, I guess the better thing to say is if you don't believe in a God or a creator, a religion, or Christianity, then we came from the water. And that is one of the reasons why I believe that water restores us and invigorates us. But back to what I was saying was, after the water, when we became apes and so forth, we were hanging out with other apes. We would play with other apes. We would go with other animals. We'd hang out with other animals. We would beat up other animals. We would beat up our other ape friends. We would go around and probably have sex with everybody that was around. It was a very fun communal experience. And the point is that I don't necessarily think that we should not be building large relationships and large networks. And I don't think that we should just be creating networks for something that I can get out of it. I think that we should be creating these strong, growing communities to see what we can give to it. And from that, if we focus on that, we will get more out of it than anything possible. And as you know, a couple of months ago, if you're listening to this podcast, I found this amazing book called Frientimacy. And Frientimacy actually addresses this exact topic, because that whole saying is here's the thing. It's not true. It is not true in any way whatsoever that you are the sum of the 5 people that you are around. I am around lately even a lot of people, and I think that maybe I encourage them to be better. It has to do with how strong you are in your values and in your integrity and what your boundaries are on whether or not you can be around the other people that are doing the things. And this took me a very, very long time to realize, because I was in the camp that I have to get rid of all these people out of my life if I'm going to be successful because they're not successful. And no, that has nothing to do with it. You can still go and do the successful things. Maybe you can even invite those people to do the successful things with you. Maybe they don't want to do the successful things, but maybe they want to do the fun things that you also enjoy doing, like going to concerts or playing video games or going to doing gaming or going and hanging out at a bar, not drinking, because you don't have to drink when you go to a bar, because I do it all of the time and I don't drink. It's about how you have your boundaries, what you're willing to do, what your value system is, what your integrity is, and what your relationship is with your spirituality or with what it is that you're doing in the world. Now, before, when I said I believe that evolution was the how and how we got here and everything, I don't personally believe in a creator, but I do believe that we have the ability to become enlightened and become perfect beings and become Buddhas, and you're batshit crazy, and that's fine. I don't give a shit. That wasn't my point. I think it's more batshit crazy to just say that certain scientific proof is not scientific proof because your religion says that it's not. It makes more sense to have that and then see where your religion could be better or different and utilize what's beneficial to move yourself forward. And so I will read this. I'm going to go through this because I read briefly over this chapter, but I think it's important because it's super important for how we deal with relationships and how we build relationships. Because the more relationships and the stronger the relationships that you have, I believe that the more wealthy and successful you will be. Okay. Not only will it make you a better human being because of those relationships that maybe aren't the other millionaires or the other successful people, because you're lifting those people up and you get some good karma points. I call them karma points. I got to think of a cooler name for it. I don't have another cooler name for it. But if you're helping and being compassionate for people that are in your life and not letting them take advantage of you and setting boundaries, which is 100% something that you should do, you're going to get badass karma points. And when the more badass karma points you have, the more badass the universe works out in your favor and you get blessed. The other great thing about it is if you're also being the successful person, the entrepreneur person, and the businessy person, you're also going building business relationships with other successful people who might also be shitty people. The people that maybe aren't successful could be really good people. And then you could be with a bunch of successful people that are shitty people. It's all about your values and your boundaries and your integrity. And that's what the chapter 11 in Frientimacy talks about. But again, I'm going to repeat this. This is a book to help women have stronger friendships, which begs the question, we should be learning a lot more from women and their ability to have friendships because it sounds like they know what the fuck they're doing. And from all of the men that I have met, it sounds like they don't know what the fuck they're doing because they're pushing everybody away from them rather than building really good decent communications and decent connections, building some a little bit stronger connections, and then having the really close connections. Because here's the honesty. If you have two or three, here's actually the truth on it. My two best friends my entire life was my wife and my friend Luke. And Luke and me, even though we had a great time, we actually also played pool this last weekend along after my business meeting. And then I had another business with my cousin, which brings me back to the other thing. I played fucking pool for 15 hours and it was amazing, but I was so sore yesterday and so tired yesterday and it's still tired today from it. So I'm not sure if any of the working out and stuff that I'm doing is helping in any of the things that would be beneficial to someone playing pool, which leads me to another train of thought that the best way to build the muscles for a specific skill is to do that skill and it will build the muscles. Makes sense. Okay. Because me and Luke, we haven't been hanging out a lot over the last couple of years, and that's been very lonely. There's the truth. And then all of that, not having that other strong friendship with him and being lonely, that got put onto my wife. And then she had difficulty with that because she wanted to go and be with her friends. And then I'm like, well, I don't have any friends. And it's not that I didn't have any friends, it's that I didn't have enough friends. That when they couldn't do anything, I didn't have enough people to have in my circle to do cool, dope shit with and get more karma points. Not that it should always be about karma points, but the point is that that's beneficial because I am hands down just that one day of hanging out with multiple different people, playing pool, having fun in a communal setting. It recharged me. Now, again, based off of my human design and how I get recharged and being a extrovert, that is supposed to recharge me, and I get it, but it really recharged me and it made me value life a lot more by being around a lot of fun people. Okay. And so in this, I found this chapter, it's chapter 11, because I haven't finished this whole book because apparently I start and stop books just like all book people do, I guess. I mean, like it's halfway done or something along those lines. And so it says that obstacle number 3, I don't know what the other obstacles are, but this obstacle is the one that hit me, the toxic friend trend. The fear that they aren't good enough or the fear that they aren't good enough. I'm going to talk about the toxic friend trend because that's the biggest thing that we hear on social media. And it's the biggest thing that I think is a lie. And I'm going to work to disprove this by having lots of friends and showing how much more wealth that it can bring you. Having friendships, having acquaintance friendships, having closer friendships, and then having that inner tight circle. And I'm excited for it because, to be honest, I just like being around people and I want to be around more people. Okay, so, and you know what? Before I was like, that's a stupid thing to say, but I was a douchey finance bro for a very long time. And now that I'm not a douchey finance bro and I'm finally able to be me, which I think is what happens when you turn 40, it's not a midlife crisis. It's just you finally grow up and you're like, fuck everybody else. I'm going to focus on doing the cool shit that I want to do. That's where I'm at in my life. And if you want to call that midlife crisis, whatever, I'm cool with it. With my diabetes, I'll probably die before this being the midlife. Maybe I'll make it to 80. Maybe I'll make it to 90. I'm going to make it to 120. Fuck that. I'm making it to 120. And it's right here on this. In fact, I'm going to be put into a computer and I'm going to live forever. That's the goal. Okay. So here's a toxic strength thing. So the idea behind this chapter from the stuff that I've read so far is that essentially she is kind of saying the same thing that I'm saying, is that like there's these headlines. So the above here's some of the above sayings that people have. People inspire you or they drain you. Pick wisely. If their presence can't add value to their life, then their absence will make no difference. Surround yourself with only people who are going to lift you higher. The above sayings and others have emerged from books and articles giving permission primarily to women to stop putting up with the unhealthy people in our lives. People who have been dubbed such names as the copycat, the doormat, the leech, the misery lover, and the user. I don't know anything about that because I'm not a woman and I'm not in that specific realm. But what I do know a lot about is these sayings are the same sayings that fucking motivational speakers on social media also say. And anybody who's trying to be a social media influencer also say this shit also. And in my mind, I'm like, there's something wrong with this because it's not very compassionate. And I want to be compassionate. So I don't want to just throw people away. So I'm going to talk about this and change it and talk from my truth and my heart about this because I don't think that it's true. And I like this book because one, I like books. And two, I don't know, Shasta Nelson, if you go watch her TED Talk, she sounds awesome or seems awesome. And she really seems like she wants to help women have good relationships with other women. So why should not men have good relationships with other people just in general? Okay. So headlines like 10 signs your friend is toxic and how to recognize a toxic friend tout the skills of weeding out these wolves in sheep's clothing. With some advice, I've seen the diplomacy of the statements in the previous bullet list are replaced with much more fraught commands like kick them to the curb, dump her, detox from her. These are the same things that men say, which is more of the reason why I think a lot of men on social media act like women, which isn't technically a bad thing, but they're literally acting like this. And this is essentially a book about women being friends with other women. Okay. Fantastic book though. Detox from her, upgrade your friends, and end it now. Same stuff that these men, the alpha males, the toxic masculine males say also. So just put that into perspective. Okay. So she gives these things. We can't enjoy intimacy if we blame others. And the whole goal and the whole thing that make women relationships dope is that they can be much more intimate about the things that are going on in their lives. And this is the one thing, the reason why men have a big problem is because they don't have intimate relationships. They don't have communities that they go into. They don't have groups that they talk to, which is actually one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of Bible study, just in general, for men and for women, because one of the things and some of the most powerful men that I've ever seen in my life were men that were in a Bible study. While the stuff that they were talking about with the religion was like, whatever, the actual ability for them to lift each other up and build each other is fantastic. In fact, Bible studies and those types of clubs are so important that there is a book that I recommend that you read called Where Have All the What Happened to All the Bowling Clubs or something along those lines. I thought that I bought it. I haven't bought it. I haven't read it. I think it's going to be great. So I'm telling you to read it. So you should go and read it right now. Drop what you're doing. Stop this. Go order that book. Order For Intimacy also, especially if you're a woman, because it's a book for women building relationships. Women, I think that'd be really great if everybody has stronger relationships. But the point is that men don't have the ability to create that intimacy. And that's why a book like this, it'd be very difficult. And I'm sure there might be some out there. I couldn't find one when I was looking and found this book. Was that because men don't talk about that, but they need to, because essentially what's happening is that they're keeping their circle so tight that when that circle goes away, they don't have any other friends that they've been having friendships with to become more vulnerable with. And then they don't have anybody that they can talk to. And then that person ends up becoming what's the word? It's where you like transpose a savior complex onto another person. And a lot of people end up doing that, especially when they're in relationships. And that's why something like this can be so powerful. And so the gentle truth is we don't enjoy intimacy if we blame others. So a lot of the times, because we're always blaming people, we can't be vulnerable enough with them to build a really strong, good relationship. And so she goes on, and I recommend that you get the book, but there's some things that you can do. The first thing that I think that she warns about, and I want to say this too, because she's not advocating that any relationship that lacks, she's not advocating any relationship that lacks the clear boundaries necessary to maintain your emotional, physical safety. That's why it's so important to have boundaries of the things that you're doing. And I think that that's one of the biggest things, whether it's in business or personal, as an entrepreneur, that's so important that we do. Okay. Because again, the whole idea of being an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur or small business is about creating strong relationships. All of life is about being set is all about creating strong relationships, and it's always about selling something in general. And we have to have boundaries in those things. And the thing that I did in the past that failed was I didn't have boundaries on the things that I was willing to do or okay with. Where before, if someone said, "Hey, do you want to smoke? Do you want to drink?" my answer was always, "Sure, why not?" Rather than saying, "You know what, I don't want to drink. Is it cool if we hang out and I don't drink? And if you drink, that's okay." A real friend's going to be say absolutely, or an even better friend might say, "Hey, you know what? We don't have to go drinking. Let's go do something else." And that's the reason why the boundaries are so important, rather than just stop having people in your life. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that we need to change to some extent. But so she says, what I'm saying is that most of us are scared of mistakes, flaws, weaknesses, and deficiencies, that we are limiting ourselves to a bunch of shallow relationships. For if we go any deeper, we will always find that our friends aren't perfect, or our business partners aren't perfect, or our spouses aren't perfect, or our God isn't perfect, or our anything isn't perfect. Ironically, finding those imperfections or not being phased by them is actually the hallmark of any deep connections. It's not our perfect facades that keep us knit together, but our willingness to expose the truth that we're still on the journey. If your own light is dim or flickering, then perhaps you may need to set some boundaries and limit time with people you feel can't support the happier and more powerful version of yourself. So when you get rid of those people, that could be fine. Doesn't mean that they have to go to the curb. It might mean that you guys are in different areas of your life, in your world, in your journey, and you might meet back up later. But to meet back up later, you have to have a strong plan in place to be reaching out to them, seeing how they're doing, continually nurturing those relationships. And it is a lot of hard work. And it doesn't need to be a ridiculous amount of hard work. It just means remembering birthdays, reaching out to people, talking to people, picking up the phone and calling them, which has been one of the biggest things that I've had to adjust to, is talking to people on the phone. Like, I'm probably going to call my cousin later. Talking to people on the phone is much better than texting them. I'm being honest. If we could get rid of texting and go back to talking to people on the phone, I'm willing to bet we live in a much happier world. Okay, so she says courageous actions. 5 practices for owning up. So here's practice 1. Okay. So own our imperfections. Our temptation is to always see the fault in the other, but giving that the study cited, I should probably study this cited earlier, 84% of women claim to have had a toxic friend, then that can mean only one of two things. One, that we've all been friends with the same 16% of the population who is toxic, or two, that to someone else, we are the toxic one. So sometimes you may not even notice, but maybe you're also the toxic one, or the one that someone else shouldn't be a friend with. And that's something to keep in mind. So why would you push that person out of your life? So she has these really cool things called friendspirations. I want to keep growing and learning. And you are going to continue to keep growing and learning by being in relationships with other people. Maybe other people that aren't always 100% aligned with you. Maybe 100% of the people that might think differently than you. And that's perfectly okay, as long as you're able to share your belief system and be who you are being in the relationship. And then maybe it doesn't work out, and maybe it's not the right time for you guys to be friends. And maybe you circle back around that to a later date. Practice number 2, assume the best in others. I heard from someone many years ago that as soon as they meet someone, someone has to prove themselves to that person. That's the most ridiculous, stupidest shit I've ever heard in my life. Assume the best in others. This is a second practice. In a world where we can screen calls, ignore emails, bully in blog comments, and unfriend with a click, we are at ever greater risk of seeing each other as objects, things we can just as easily discard or retain. One way we do this is by labeling people such as doormats, leech, users. I've never labeled any of those people. Maybe user, not a leech. That seems really, really rough. I mean, a leech is one of those things that like sucks on your blood through your skin or something. I don't know what a leech is. Someone send me pictures of leeches. But since humans are far too complex to be showed into one simpler category, any label we will assign will be both incorrect and unhelpful. So the goal here is to not label people and assume the best in others. For inspiration, I am willing to see the good in people. And every time that I say this in friends, think about this in business partners. So businesses and business partners and salespeople and our sales relationships sometimes are going to make mistakes. All of them are imperfect. You are also imperfect. So be open to that when finding out that someone else is imperfect, that doesn't mean that relationship or that friendship needs to end. Second, I'm willing to see the good in people. I am willing to see the good in all of my business partners. I'm willing to see the good in all of my business connections. Okay. That doesn't mean that it's always going to end well. It doesn't mean that they're always going to have good intentions. But the problem is that if one of those things falling out and you lose that trust, then it's going to set you back even further because it's going to make you harder to trust. And just because it happened once, just because it happened twice, just because it happened 3 times, just because it happened 4 times, doesn't mean that it's going to happen the 5th time, the 6th time, the 7th time, the 8th time, the 9th time, the 10th time, the 11th time, the 12th time, the 13th time, or the 14th time. That doesn't have anything to do with that. Okay. So practice 3, work to understand others' needs. Work to understand your business partner's needs. Work to understand your sales partner's needs. Work to understand your client's needs. You can even do this with clients too. Ready? All right, just take this fringe out. Own your clients' imperfections. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to suck. They're going to piss you off. It's okay. They're still your client and you still want to have a good relationship with them. Okay. 2, assume the best in your clients. Assume that they are being honest with you. Assume that they're trying to understand what you're trying to give to them. Assume that they're going to need the thing that you're going to do, and go out of your way, go above and beyond for them. Work to understand your client's needs. Work to understand your business partner's needs. Work to understand your needs. Work to understand others' needs. Okay, for example, she always complains nothing is good enough for her. No matter how much good I point out to her, she focuses on the negative. She's never satisfied. She's obsessed with making more money, becoming more beautiful, achieving more. I told her she just needs to be content with what she has, or she'll never be happy. We likely all know someone we consider a complainer, the person who talks endlessly about the same problem or who leaves one problem just to seek out another and then talks endlessly about that. Of course, talking through our problems with each other is what friends do, but we can get understandably weary of offering the same friendly, supportive, caring advice to the friend just to have her come back for another large helping next week. Sometimes, exhausted at the thought of offering yet another pep talk, we can be inclined to ignore or push away that friend rather than feed what we might fear is an insatiable need. But it so happens that the instinctive approach can be more problematic than effective. That's because many of the behaviors that annoy us and others derive from a sense of shame and fear. So our fear of her need only adds fuel to the causes of her behavior. Okay. It looks like researcher Dr. David R. Hawkins describes in a book called Power and Force, The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior, how shame and fear, 2 of the weakest thought patterns we engage in, drain our energy and discourage our initiative. So if we ignore or diminish a pessimistic friend, her shame and fear will likely increase. Our intimacy will reduce, our objective will have backfired, and will have offered pain instead of love to our friendship. Is that who we want to be? People are more likely to exchange what they feel strong and safe and loved. So what if, instead of trying to distract our negative friend with positive thoughts, we experiment with empathizing with her, compassion, like by saying, oh, that does sound really stressful, much like a child with a scraped knee comes crying to mom for comfort first and band-aid second. When we experience a pain of some kind, we need to acknowledge it and give it before we can move on from it. Okay, so sorry, I kind of trailed off there. So for inspiration, I believe in the power of love and compassion to transform. And so instead of empathizing and compassion, in my opinion, are more important than anything else in the world. I'm sure compassion is some type of chemical thing in our brain, just like love. But let's just say it's not, because I don't know enough about it. And so love is a fleeting emotion because it's a chemical related to a chemical that's inside of our brain. Compassion is something different, in my opinion, because compassion is what leads to empathy. And when we can learn to be more empathetic to people, we can truly understand that what we actually need to do is listen to people and only give advice if they tell us that it's okay to give them advice, or if we offer them the ability to give advice. This is that thing that a lot of people genderize this a lot. So a lot of people say that men are always trying to solve problems. That might be true. That just might be the role that we've been given in the society that has been in our epigenetics because of whatever's happened in the past with our parents, whatever we've been taught that men are supposed to care for people. I mean, that's what my mom was taught. I mean, my stepdad was a piece of shit, and he was a piece of shit because he didn't take care of the family, and that's what men are supposed to do. Okay. And so if you're supposed to take care of the family, if you're supposed to do stuff, then the idea is that, well, your whole goal is to solve the problems that I have, the other person being the significant other, whether that's person gay, straight, transgender, doesn't matter. The other person that's in the partnership, if the goal is to take care of that person, then you are supposed to solve the problem. So when someone comes to you talking, I don't want to use the complaining, but complaining's complaining, venting's complaining, everything's complaining. It's fine. Whenever you're talking about something that's going on in your life, we got to move away from the complaining. People really aren't complaining. They're sharing with you something that's happening because of the fact that they feel comfortable enough with you to share that thing. You're the one that's assuming that it's complaining. And so when someone comes to you and talks to you about that thing, if we can be compassionate and learn to empathize, what we'll find is that maybe they don't need an answer. And so this genderization has been kind of pushed on men, saying that men are always trying to solve, where women just want someone to listen. And so listening is a very strong byproduct of empathy, and it's a very strong byproduct of compassion. So if we can learn to be compassionate, we can learn to be empathetic, and if we can learn to be empathetic, we can learn to listen. And when we can learn to listen, we can then understand what's happening, and then we can ask if it's okay if I give advice. If the person says no, which normally they won't, they will say, yeah, you know what? I like to hear your advice. That's when you give the advice. Because if you don't do that and you just give the advice, a lot of people think that you're just trying to tell them what to do. And especially in today's age, no one likes to be told what to do. I know I don't like to be told what to do. My mom always tells me, don't do this, don't do this, do this, do this. It frustrates the fuck out of me. But if she said, and this goes the opposite way, I do the same thing to her. That's probably where I learned it from, my mom. If she said, hey, Jeremy, can I give you some advice? I would be like, you know what? Yeah. Or I might be in a shitty mood and I might say, you know what? No, but let me calm down. And when I'm when I'm more calm, maybe we can get back together. And again, that's fucking ridiculous, right? Because that's going to take more time and energy. Why? Is it important? Because the more time and energy that we give to these things, the better I have found that our life and our world becomes. And I think that we're going about it all wrong in society. And I'm not trying to say that to go on the other side of the scope and for people to be like, Jeremy's got the right answer because it's not the regular. That's not my point. What I like to look at is what the research shows me, what I can put into practice, and if it made it better, and I'll share it with you. And this is from my own experience that I believe that this is a much better way to build strong relationships. And I also believe that we can do this in a large, wide circle so that we can always have good friendships throughout our life. And that is what makes us better. That is what keeps us younger. That is what creates longevity. And that is actually what creates us a good, strong life. The money doesn't create us a good, strong life. Having good people to spend the money with creates a good, strong life. And if you don't have the people to spend that money with, then you're just going to be searching for something forever. And I doubt that you're ever really going to be happy, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I have money and I'd really much prefer having a lot of good friends. Okay. Words to understand needs. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So this is another one. Rethink the word needy. A lot of people always say that person's needy is where I'm guessing that this is going. Here's one of the inspirations. Needs are meant to be met with love. And I'm going to take that a step further. And needs are meant to be met with compassion. Let's see what this says. Let us not forget that we all have needs. Being needy doesn't indicate a flaw of character, but an expression of a quest for connection. So think about this. Whenever you want to say, this is what I would recommend. This is what I'm going to try to do. This is what I'm going to do for myself. Whenever you say they seem really needy, you know what they are, what they need? They need a connection. They're trying to connect with you. That's why they feel needy. We need each other and we need to feel connected, and we do so with the hunger that is both healthy and human. Ongoing studies have been examining what is called the dependency paradox, which has demonstrated that the more dependent we are on each other, the more independent and creative we are. In unpacking this theory, psychiatrist and neuroscience Dr. Amir Levin and his co-author Rachel Heller note in their book Attached, The New Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love. How attachment principles teach us that most men and women are only as needy as their unmet needs. So if they're having unmet needs, then they're going to be needy. The more that their unmet needs are being met, they're no longer needy. When their emotional needs are met, they usually turn their attention outward. Multiple studies have found that in romantic relationships, our partners impact and regulate our blood pressure, our heart rates, our breathing rates, and even the levels of hormones in our blood. Dependence is a fact. It is not a choice or a preference. Friendship and other platonic relationships, other relationships, business relationships, client relationships, friendships obviously won't impact us as strongly, but to recognize that we will need each other and we are intrinsically intertwined is not something to feel shame over, because all of us are connected. Why? Because when we crawled out of the ocean on our 4 lizard ass scales and we became some other stupid looking lizard, and then that stupid lizard died because I don't know, it couldn't plant something, or I don't know, lost a foot, and then we became another lizard, and then eventually you came along as an ape, and then your ape ancestors came along, and the whole time we were always living in communities. If we came from the water, what do fish do? They live in a community. If evolution ends up being the factual thing, in which it is the factual thing right now, if it doesn't get to be disproven, we all came from the sea, and in the sea we are communal, and on the land we were communal, but now we're separating ourselves further than ever, and we have every single person on social media telling us that we need to have less and closer people in our lives. But that's not how we've ever been. And frankly, it's not how I want to be. Okay, so needs are meant to be met with love. And then the 5th one, trust that you are safe. That's why you always have a gun. So don't let them take their guns away. I don't know. I'm just playing around on that one. Although I'm an advocate for guns. I do think there needs to be some better laws about some stuff, but we're not talking about that right now. Trust that you are safe. The following email illustrates how quickly this fear of believing in the good in people can damage any hope in intimacy. I feel like giving up on my goals of, this is a quote, I don't know who the quote's from. I feel like giving up on my goals of adding connections because I realize that 2 of my friends are passive aggressive and basically selfish. I feel a little sick inside because I'm afraid that everyone might be like that. They were the only people I was somewhat close to, so I'm back to 0. I'm still giving the appearance of being friends, but I'm planning on distracting myself. I'm starting to lose hope in making any meaningful connections. I want to withdraw and protect myself from being treated badly. I am losing trust in people. She undoubtedly hoped that I would assure her that she's wise to walk away from people she has determined are passive aggressive and basically selfish. But she showcases in her very dilemma where that choice leads to. Where does it lead to? It leads to loneliness, loss of hope, self-protection, and broken trust in humanity. And remember, we're not talking about abuse here. We're talking, this is from the book. We're not talking about a pattern of noting a few problematic behaviors, diagnosing someone as unfit, and then justifying withdrawing from the friendship, right? Which is, again, okay, because we have our boundaries, we have certain things. I'm not going to go, again, if I meet a crackhead, I mean, maybe I'll hang out with him if we're going and playing pool or something. But other than that, I mean, I'm not, I hit my audio. I'm not going to be going and doing crack with the guy unless we have some other weird thing in common and he's not stealing from me. I might hang out with him, but you know what I mean? Okay. Hopefully you know what I mean. If you don't know what I mean, DM me or something, or Snapchat me. Never get the Snapchat to work. I'll give someone $20 if they Snapchat me. Just remember that. Just say, hey, where's my $20? Okay. We're talking about a pattern of noting a few problematic behaviors, diagnosing someone as unfit, and then justifying withdrawal from that friendship. In essence, the pattern is repeatedly doing an about face and fleeing before looking a friend in the face and really seeing. Giving up and pulling away, or simply giving them the appearance of being friends, guarantees that we never reach the connection we crave. While it might feel safe, it's not fulfilling, and we're the ones who lost out. C.S. Lewis says it beautifully. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one. And that includes clients, friends, business partners, anybody. For inspiration. The love in me calls out to the love in others and can never be extinguished. And so I know that was a lot of Frintimacy stuff because it's from a book called Frintimacy. But the point is, you can extrapolate all of the information that I just talked about, extrapolate it to your personal love life, your friendships, whether you're a man or a woman or anything, man or a woman or non-binary or I guess the man and the woman, man, woman, any other gender. You can extrapolate that information and it works for anything, for businesses, partners, for sales partners, for work partners, for employees, for anything. And that's why I used to have this saying and I'm changing it. You don't have to love other people. You have to have compassion for other people. I think compassion and why there's a whole religion based around it. And there's a whole line of Buddhism about it. And compassion is so important is because that is really the key. You don't have to like someone. You technically don't even have to love them. But if you have compassion for them, we can change the world. But if you have compassion for the people that are in your life and you're working to build strong connections and strong relationships with them, then it's okay if they're not everything that you need them to be. Not everybody is going to want to be an entrepreneur, but they can still be your friend. Not everybody is going to believe the same things that I believe when it comes to like not voting for Trump and technically not voting for Biden. But I'm a far leftist person. I believe in anarchy. I believe in communism. I believe capitalism should be destroyed by giving power back to the employees that work in the businesses so that they can have a vote for the people that run the businesses and they can dictate their lives while they're at work. And people think I'm fucking batshit crazy. And if they don't want to be my friend, that's okay. But I'll still be their friend if they love Donald Trump, if they think COVID's fucking crazy, if they think that COVID's going to kill everybody in 10 years, if Democrats are eating children's brains or whatever the fuck, it is that those things are okay to be different. There's no reasons not to be friends with someone if there is common ground and common relationship building that can happen. If there's not, and you have your boundaries, and that person doesn't need to be in your life, and that's why having your boundaries are so important. So go pick up the book Frintimacy. We're going to be going on this journey for a very long time because I have a goal to build one of the strongest networks in the world, because that is truly the path to power. I don't know what power I'm seeking. Maybe it's the power for me just to be a better human being or to share that with people. Maybe it's the power to become the governor of Arizona or the treasurer of Arizona. Maybe it's the power of just being able to be okay, not having a bunch of shit in the world and chilling with my wife and my friends and having good relationships and doing fun shit. It could be lots of those things. It could be all of those things. It could be one of those things. But I know that it can be none of those things if I do not have a strong network, because again, my design is my network, is my net worth, and that is what led me on this journey, but it's so much more, and I'm glad that I could share some of this with you. So remember, be thankful, grateful, and kind, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
You were born in your dying, honey, I'm already crying for you.
Thank you so much for listening to The Age of Jeremy. If you like this podcast, please make sure to subscribe and rate it 5 stars. If you really think that it was 5 stars, rate it in whatever podcatcher you were listening to it in, if your podcatcher allows you to. The opening song was Gaslight Anthem, Positive Charge. The closing song was Gardens by Trevor Hall. I use Neumann microphones. I record into my L8. I record to a Steinberg's Cubase utilizing Waves plugin. So make sure that you go pick up all that great gear. And as I always say, one last time, be thankful, grateful, and kind. We'll talk with you next time. Bye.
Blooming colorful clouds in the sky.